Two people very close to me and to the kin. Carlos Dominguez, currently Chief Operating Officer of Spriklr. This is one of those unicorns that we've all been hearing about. Carlos himself seems like a unicorn sometimes. You'll get what I mean when you meet him. Formerly Senior Vice President of Cisco, Office of the Chairman. He was the fellow that John Chambers, when he couldn't make a speaking engagement, would say, Carlos, you go take care of it. And man, did he knock the ball out of the park every time. Betsy Holden, who will be guiding us through this next segment and having a chat with Carlos, is the former CEO of Kraft. She's on a number of boards now. But a story I love to tell, she was a school teacher, a high school teacher. You'll see that, a little bit of that in her ways of interacting. But you'll also see the CEO come through here and there. And the story I like to tell is she was teaching high school. She started experimenting with new teaching aids and products, and then the company said, hey, can you be one of our testers and give us feedback? She said, this is really exciting. She did more of that, and then she decided to get an MBA at Kellogg, so she came and got an MBA at Kellogg, and then she became CEO of Kraft. So the lesson of the story is, get it, MBA at Kellogg, become CEO. Great. With that, Betsy Holden and Carlos Dominguez.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
In reality, I was a grade school teacher. And when I interviewed for business, they said, how are you ever going to do this? And I said, the only difference is the age of the children that you deal with. And you do not know how true that has ended up being. Well, good morning. And thank you all for showing up, okay? You are the guys and gals who work hard and play hard and still show up. So thank you all for being here. And I wanted to start by, I think, a huge thank you to Rob, to Jeffrey, to Anna, to everybody, to all the Kellogg students, to everybody, Peter, to everybody on the planning group. I think every year you go, wow, Ken is unbelievable. How are they ever going to do better the next year? And somehow the team does. So I think a huge round of applause for an unbelievable effort. I would also like to thank all of you. I think this is, to me, something that I do block out of my calendar, and I find this to be an incredibly special time, as Rob said, of introspection, of extrospection, of inspiration, of really building a community. So thank you to all of you for making my time here so special. And with that, Rob introduced Carlos. I'm going to let him take you through leadership in a rapidly changing world, and then we'll have a dialogue.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Wow, what a party last night. I couldn't stay the whole time because I was afraid I wasn't going to show up, but thank you for being here. What a way. You throw the best parties, man. I am thrilled to be here and more importantly, sharing the stage with Betsy. It's not every day I get to do this, and I'm really, really excited. So I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership in this new world, and I'd like to begin just by telling you a little background, right? So that is me over there. Believe it or not, I'm as tall as those kids in that picture. But I spent 23 years at Cisco in a very privileged position, right? Representing one of the foremost CEOs that we all know of our time. And in that capacity, not only representing, but really thinking about what's happening in the world, right? And really helping Cisco anticipate the changes that were coming. And through that, like all of you, trying to drive innovation. And that's not an easy task. Trying to change a large corporation is really, really difficult to do. And I did that for 23 years. After John announced his retirement, and I knew it, I decided to exit. And I had told my wife I was going to go hang out on a beach and drink margaritas with her. And what I ended up doing was now becoming, oh, by the way, this is what I used to do the gigs, just to show you and to prove it. That is me. So really, really fun. But I left that and went to run a startup. So I can tell you my wife's not happy because I'm not drinking. We have a beach house, so she's drinking margaritas on the beach without me. But it's one of those things that's radically different. And really, when you look at the juxtaposition of a large corporation trying to run, a startup by every intention, my view of the world is quite unique. And what I want to do is really just share those. And before we get into leadership, and it's kind of one of these topics Everyone's got ideas, and I'll give you some of mine. But I want to take you a moment just to reset the clock and get us all in the same place. I'm not going to share anything with you that you don't already know. So there's not going to be any aha moments here, but it gets us into the right frame of mind. So we are living in a new world, and I don't think any of you are going to argue that. And at the foundation of everything is we're connected in a way that we could never imagine before, right? And it's happened really, really fast. Just think about the internet, think of mobile, right? And think of social media connecting individuals. That has happened in 25 years. And in the process has basically transformed everything. 200 or 300 years of how we run businesses are totally being disrupted by this connectivity, right? A couple things that are kind of obvious to all of us. People have power now. A single individual can take your millions of dollars of marketing and totally trash you. The power of one, and there's a gazillion examples. This is stuff that you know. The second thing that's really important to understand is that knowledge is democratized. We can find anything out about anyone or anything like this. There are platforms that are connecting us in ways that we could never imagine. Anybody that's going to come to Spriklr, first thing they do is they go to Glassdoor, right? And really, really interesting. I met with the head of HR of a large corporation 2 weeks ago, and she tells me, Carlos, there's all these bad things being said about us on Glassdoor. What can I do about it leveraging social media? And I looked at her and I said, well, is it true? And she goes, yeah. I said, well, that's the problem. You got to fix that. There's no money you can spend in trying to change that, right? Because we're living in a world where you cannot hide. Everything about you and your company is out there, right? There's no degrees of separation. The good, the bad, and the ugly, everyone knows. We're also living in a world that is quite interesting. When I speak to a lot of the chief marketing officers, and Mohan I just had an incredible dialogue with, is, in the old days, we can spend all the money because it was one direction, put TV ads and billboards and all this stuff. Nobody was talking to each other. I can brainwash you, and I can pay my way out of a critical situation. Now, no one cares what you say. And the best example of that is how many of you have gone to Amazon to buy a product that you knew you were going to buy? How many of you have done that? And then all of a sudden you read a review and you buy something else. Yes. Did you know the person? So we're relying on people we don't even know to make our purchasing decisions. We don't believe brands. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of data on who we trust, right? These are things that are really, really important to understand because the fundamental dynamics of business are not what they used to be. And then, God help us, I have 3 of these at home. These Gen Yers, they're social, totally different expectations. Let me tell you a story about my 22-year-old cat. She takes out a brand new car, goes to the supermarket, calls me crying. I said, oh my God, something really bad happened. She says, Dad, I had the car parked, the truck came by and ripped the mirror off. I said, are you okay? She goes, yes. I've tweeted the insurance company. I went on their Facebook page. It's been an hour and I haven't heard from them. What do I do? And I turn around and go, open up the glove compartment, pull out the insurance card. There's a 1-800 number on it. Dial them. Make sure you got a police report and do that. Okay, Dad, I'll do that. So that goes on. And 2 hours later, she shows up, and there is a very different daughter that showed up. One that was nervous and remorseful and please help me, to someone who walked in the door and I am pissed. And I said, what's the matter, Kat? You need to find a new insurance company, Dad. They transferred me 7 times. I had to give the same information, blah, blah, blah. And that went through, and I said to myself, that insurance company will never have her business, right? And those are the things that are the aha moments, right? You want me to call an 800 number? You got to be kidding me, right? They make the rules, not us, in big business anymore. When you add it all up, any way you look at it, these technologies, this connectivity, have empowered people to learn about brands, to form opinions, to buy products, to seek support, to look for a job. Every aspect and every function in every single one of your businesses
are being transformed. And those are things that we need to really understand. And when we talk about disruption, that's the disruption we're talking about. Every single client I talk to, every CEO that I talk to says, oh, we've got a digital transformation. I say, well, why are you transforming? You have to transform because your customers are transformed. We don't do digital transformation because it's a fun thing to do. You do digital transformation because you have to. So we're at a turning point in history, and one of the interesting things is there's no industry that is immune. If anyone in this room thinks that you're in an industry that's not being disrupted, I'd love to talk to you, because I want to get in that business, right? Everyone, and I don't care what it is. And here's a really interesting, Cisco worked with a couple of research companies, and one of the questions they asked the respondents, you know, tell me the risk of being put out of business increasing somewhat or significantly as a result of digital disruption. And this is what the chart came out. And what's pretty interesting to me is that it goes across, and if you think about it, right, oil and gas is on the lower spectrum of that, because think of the infrastructure, the research, the cost of startup to be able to do that. That's kind of obvious, right? But then as you move up, hospitality, travel, rental, media and entertainment, financial services, technology. Here's a wonderful example. I ran the telecom business and built it for Cisco. And it went from 250 to about $14 billion in a 7-year period. And I used to be really tall and good looking before that. As you can see what happens when you grow businesses really fast. But if you look at the telecom business, there's a lot of infrastructure that's required to really be in that business. And here's a wonderful chart on the text marketplace, right? It was a $100 billion business for telecom until WhatsApp came out. Here's the power of a platform. Here's the power of connectivity. I was running the business in that period of time, and I saw the total disruption that took place. You know, and it's not only text, right? They start now offering free mobile calls. You know, they're doing payments next. Calculated is over $386 billion of potential being taken out of that marketplace in an industry, in a marketplace that didn't exist. Here's one that scares the living daylights out of me, right? In general, what is the attitude of your company's leadership toward digital disruption? 45% say that digital disruption is not a board level concern. Now, I have to tell you, I showed this to Betsy. Betsy goes, she sits on, Betsy, you know, is on Uber boards and some big ones. She says, no, you know, we're talking about it. And really the conversation is, a lot of them are talking about it, but when I really ping down is I'm not getting the right answers, right? And as a result of that, look at this stat, right? 52% of companies, Fortune 500, either gone bankrupt, been acquired, or ceased to exist since 2000. So I use these two slides normally when I meet with a CEO and go like, if you're not scared, you should be. You know, and it's not only being scared, it's what the heck do you do about it, right? So in conclusion, before Betsy really tries to extract some pearls of wisdom from me, I'm going to talk about some suggestions of leading in the digital age, and I'll give you a precursor to this and tell you just a reminder that you get what you pay for. They haven't paid me to do this, so it's free advice, so don't take it too seriously, right? So the first one is you need to understand the impact of digital on your business. I ask that question continuously. The starting point for a CEO is recognition that they have to change. Most CEOs are my age. We didn't grow up with a mobile phone. We didn't grow up with social media. We didn't grow up with the internet. You look at my kids and how they use those technologies versus how I use them. I'm not a digital native. It's work for me to try to understand. 9 out of 10 times I'm doing something, my kids take the phone out of my hand and go, here, Dad, here, and they hand it back to me. And I have to stop them and go, let me learn. Let me learn, right? So that's kind of where we are. And before a company can transform, the leader has to transform. You have to be the leader. You got to understand what digital means to your company. And more importantly, the question I asked them, are you the best person to lead your company through transformation? Do you understand it? I can tell you the majority of this very senior people, They know the words. They don't use the technologies. I had a conversation with a CEO about Twitter. And I said, are you using it? No, I'm not. They don't let me use it. But even if they allowed me to use it, I wouldn't do it. I said, why not? He goes, I don't understand these kids, right? They said, I'm going to climb a mountain. So they tweet, I'm preparing to climb a mountain. Here I am starting at the base of the mountain. I've taken 10 feet, and here's a picture of me 10 feet into the mountain. Then I've gone up to 100 yards, and here's me smiling with, look at this view. And then I've done this, and 100 pictures. And finally, here's a picture of me on top of the mountain. He says, I just climbed the freaking mountain. Right? It's a different perspective. Right? We don't understand. And those are the things that you have to ask, are you the right person? So one of the things that I did at Cisco that was really, really a lot of fun is this whole notion of reverse mentoring. Get the youth to help you. But that's not easy to do. It takes an acceptance of ego. It takes an acceptance of a senior person to say, I don't know something. I need help. I don't know about you, but how many of the senior people that you know are willing to expose that? Right? And those are the challenges of why we're having so much disruption. That's A.G. Lafley. And one of the things he said to me when I interviewed him, he said, experience is not always a good thing. And I said to him, tell me what you mean. He said to me, sometimes I see a problem and I worry deeply that as soon as I know the answer to it, that the answer I'm looking at and the problem I'm looking at is not the same problem that I knew 10 years ago. So I said, wow, that's a really deep thing. I said, well, what do you do about it? He says, when I'm making a big decision and I know the answer to something really, really fast, based on my experience, I take a 48-hour pause. I get other people to look at it. And he's saying, strangely enough, 10, 15% of the time, it's a totally different problem that if I would have made that decision, I would have been wrong. Very, very unique that a man with 45 years of experience and a track record he has, he's so self-aware to say, I don't know everything, especially with the speed in which things have changed. Change and experimentation in a company. And Betsy and I will probably talk a little bit about this, but very, very important. Are you building a culture in your organization that is enabling people to change? And I don't like the thing of making mistakes and failing. It's really about learning, right? No great idea starts as a great idea. Trust me, it's all about iteration. All of the innovators that are here, you do a first idea. No, it doesn't work that way, right? So you have to have a culture that allows that to happen. The biggest challenge for us as leaders is to get a company to change. And the only way to do it is you got to create a burning platform. Find a competitor. Find somebody, even pretend, make up a competitor, right? And rally around it. Because if you can't put a flag and a target and everyone rallying towards something, you'll never make it happen. So that's something that I would tell you to do. And never waste a crisis. Invent a burning platform when you have a crisis, right? Handle the crisis, but keep fueling it. All of these things are really important. And the last thing is you got to focus on delivering great customer experiences. We're living in a world, when you look at all the research, it's all about experiences. And it's taking us back. We used to go to the local store and they go, Carlos, I know you. How you doing? How's your mom? How are your brothers? Here, I know you want this. Bring this home for mom. They knew who you were. It's easy. We're physical. And then all of a sudden, right, this is where the competition's coming. This is the winners and losers will be chosen by who delivers the best experiences, right? But it's really hard and most brands struggle with it. And the reason they struggle is more today than ever is there's so many doors that your customers come in. We did some analysis on touch points. On an average brand, there's over 8,000 touch points. And each touch point has a different system, has a different way of capturing data. They don't talk, customer care doesn't talk to marketing, doesn't talk to HR. You have 8,000 different views of me. How the heck are you ever going to know me? How are you going to serve me if you can't see me? So a lot of the stuff, let me just show you something to humor you here for a minute. Rescan item.
It happens so often, you almost get used to it.
Representative. Representative.
Which is why being put first
Relax. We got this.
takes some getting used to.
Oh.
Join the nation.
Nationwide is on your side.
You know, the point to be made there is it's kind of humorous, but it's the truth. That's what experiences are like. All of us, I can go around the room and we each have 20 experiences with brands that we're very loyal to treat us like crap. Right? That's not going to be accepted because all it's going to take is one of the brands figuring it out and they're going to change the way everything. Uber's done it, right? Airbnb's done it. Amazon's done it. Apple's done it. They're category changers. And that's what we're dealing with, right? I feel disconnected. You're asking me the same questions. You don't know me. You know, so the biggest challenge that we need to figure out is how do we really know our customers and how do we get around it? And there's a whole plethora of reasons, right? Lack of leadership and strategy, too many options, technology with a lot of point solutions, siloed data, too many touch points, you don't know me. So we will be moving as an organization from a very brand-centric world on how the whole company operates that way to a very customer-centric world. And I'm not going to get into the details of how to do it. That's what, the reason I'm at Spriklr is that's what we do for a living, right? With technology and process and a variety of other things. But you have to become customer-centric. In the end, if you don't know me, I will never be able to love you. And the experiences that you will create won't be things that are positive. You know, Maya Angelou said, people never forget how you make them feel. And it's so true. So with that, let me sit down and join Betsy here.
All right, fabulous.
I'm gonna get closer.
Great job.
I'm gonna get closer.
All right, so where do we start?
Anywhere you want.
All right, I think you spent so many years at a big company, now at a startup.
Yeah.
What's been most liberating about being at a startup?
I guess booking my own travel.
But it's digital.
Not having an entourage. Not having to wear a suit, shaving whatever the heck I want to shave. Now, what's been most liberating for me, one is I was a senior person, but in a large corporation, the org structure, there's so much, I don't want to use the word politics, but decisions kind of bureaucracy. And what I find liberating is that in a 15-minute conversation with the right people at Spriklr, I make a decision that would have been a 6 to 12-month decision in the other way. Right? And that order of magnitude of speed is, for me, the most liberating component
Which
of it
is
all.
so critical in a world of disruption.
Absolutely.
Because the people disrupting you are moving at that speed from it. So let's flip it around then. At Spriklr, what's most challenging? What's been most eye-opening going from big to startup?
The lack of any process on anything. You know, and you know, and it's really interesting. I walked in, and in the first week, I had it all figured out. Oh my God, we need a process for this, and we need a process for that, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And the more time I spent in it is, I would have tried managing a startup like a $56 billion business, and I would have probably crashed the business. So it's the art of understanding how much process is enough, but you don't kind of change it. And what's really interesting, there's a lot of white space. Since we're not a lot of structure in there, roles are so loosely defined that, you know, this person does this person, but there's all this stuff that nobody knows who the heck does it. And what the most amazing thing is two things. One is my average age is 27, so God help me, inside the company. But the second thing is the white space gets covered.
Yeah.
People just say, you know, I'll do, and you find that, you know, all these things, where in a big company, no one steps out of their box. God forbid you leave your box. Here we have no boxes. So that, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's some greatness to it. I sometimes, when we have problems, I kind of describe ourselves as like a 200-pound baby. We have a lot of power, but we're really immature, right? And what I want to do is I want to become a toddler, but don't want to lose that, you know, innocence of seeing the world and through a new lens.
Yeah. Or so the Goldilocks of way too much process, no process. what's just right.
Just
from
right.
A,
Yeah.
you talked a lot. No, so when you're 45% of CEOs not seeing disruption, I have to be honest, that one just floored me and not being on the board agenda, because I do see it on the board agenda. One of the challenges I see is most of this disruption is an S curve. So you know it's coming, but in the beginning people go, see, it's not really coming that fast. And then all of a sudden it kills you. And so I see the S curve effect, and I see two things from that. Number one is the fear of shifting so many of the resources from your established to the disruption. So, and knowing how and when to do that. And a lot of times the digital disruption doesn't make money the same way your core business does. And how do you manage, as somebody who's running a public company, how do you balance both sides of that? So any thoughts on helping people to make the investments at the right time, and how do you manage that S curve?
Therein lies, I think.
Yeah.
Therein lies the biggest challenge, right? Either disrupt yourself or somebody else will do it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lesson from Amazon. I admire Jeff immensely for two reasons. One is he's been masterful at setting expectation in the financial community that he's not going to make a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
In a publicly traded company to do that, man, we should all learn from him. The second thing that
He is a large shareholder, though.
Yeah, he's a large shareholder. But the second component of that is the fact that he's disrupting himself every day, right? And I'll give you a really wonderful example. We're one of the largest customers, right? In the platform, we store petabytes of data on everything that we do. And one of the interesting things with Amazon is periodically they will come to us and say, hey, I know your bill is this, but we're going to lower it to this. Yeah. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
You're lowering I'm not even asking you. No, well, economies of scale. So how do you compete with that?
Yeah.
Right? It's a whole different mindset. And, that's why their stock is, and we can argue, AWS is now becoming profitable.
Yeah.
So that mindset. So you gotta kind of balance the yin and yang. I just want to come back 1 second, and I want to add a little bit of clarity to the disruption component.
Yeah.
I think all the CEOs understand that disruption is coming, and I think everyone has got some sort of digital transformation going inside the company. And digital transformation, as we know, it's a business model change, it's a process change. And the third pillar is experience. You got to deliver incredible customer experience. Those are the three things you need to address. I don't find many that can articulate what the digital strategy is for their company, right? Because so what I'm thinking about is, if disruption is coming and your savior is you need to transform digitally and you need to have a strategy to do it, and they can't articulate it, to me you're not going to get to the end game. Right? What are the KPIs? Who's leading it? What are you running? And where they fall really, really short is in this thinking about, you got to put the customer at the center of everything, but no one's empowered. And even when the average lifespan of a chief experience officer is like this big, because they're trying to corral everybody. They go, hey, I'm customer care. Don't stay out of my. I'm marketing. Don't talk to me about, here's a person trying to, let me bring you cupcakes, I'll bring you wine and alcohol, and, let me bring every vice that I can possibly bring to try to get you to work with me. But they have no power.
Yeah.
They don't have budget, and it's a really, so if anybody's looking for a chief experience officer, don't do it, at least at this point in time.
No, but I'd like to ask the audience that. So how many people feel like their company or organization does a fabulous job on customer experience? How many people feel that way? Wow.
Couple, wow.
Yeah.
I want
Look
to talk
at
to
those
you.
people at the break and
I want to talk to you
no,
both
but that's exactly what I see. What I see is people talk about it, but the lack of real delivery in established companies against the customer experience. Because, as you said, the silos, people do their own part maybe well, but nobody's connecting, or there's difficulty in connecting it across the box. So give them some advice on, across the functions, across the silos, what are 3 things they can do to help address?
Yeah, so the evolutionary component, what I would ask you is, depending on what function you're in, if you're care, just as an example, what does care 3.0 look like?
Yeah.
How do you bring social, digital into the 1-800 world and everything else? How do you create a unified view of your client? What systems do you need to integrate to? and it's a difficult tech challenge because the new world is all unstructured data.
Yeah.
The old world is all CRM, put the thing in the field, and that is easy. I mean, the unstructured data is 1,000-fold more complex and voluminous than the structured world. So one thing is figure out functionally how you really build your 3.0 function. That's one. Second thing you do then is who do you need to connect to? What other function do you need to connect to? What data do you need to exchange?
Yeah.
Right? When you put the customer at the center of it. And number 3, build a digital plan across the entire company.
Right.
Because if I look at it myopically in my thing, you're never going to get there.
And that's where I worked with a financial services company that did exactly that. Even though they had the functional silos, they put a team together with key decision makers in each function. They designed the customer experience, ideal 3.0, and then they figured out what they had to do to deliver against it from a...
That's a genius way of doing it. Now, what I've seen, and another best practice that I see is, you're here today, here's your end state. This is a 3 or 4 year journey.
Yeah.
So how do you bring it back to do the next 3 months, this is what we're going to achieve? Because if you tell somebody it's 4 years, everyone's going to lose interest.
Yeah. And that's where, as a board member, sometimes that's what you look for. You look, what's the roadmap? What are the KPIs? And people struggle with that. So let's come back to, you talked about experimentation and iteration. I have a colleague who runs the ebooks, Kindle, that whole business at Amazon. And one of the things he said to me is, I run 100 experiments a day. So whenever I do anything, I'm never worried because I always know it's going to work because I've already done the test and I've proven it. So give them some advice on other best practices you've seen and how do you build, can I get out my bugaboo? Stop talking about failure. You talked about that earlier. We have to change the language. We have to build organizations that are learning, that are iterating, that are experimenting. And we have to stop talking about the award for the biggest failure or the best failure. It's like we have to change our language from... All right, I've got that out. Go ahead.
I feel better that you said it too. There are so many things. One of the aha moments I had at Spriklr is the notion that how we prioritize and commit development. Right. So in my prior experience has been you do a market sensing. You kind of decide, what are the kind of key things and that you want to develop. You put up a product requirements document together, you do some market analysis, research, and then you build it. It's very Steve Jobs-like in the sense that, he said all the time is the customer will never know what you want. Our philosophy is 180 degrees from that. Is we come up with a lot of great ideas, but we build nothing until we have a client that's willing to put money behind it. So when you look at 1,000 ideas, it's really easy to prioritize them because if someone's not willing to pay for it, it should be done.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a good lesson learned for, I know there were a number of people here that are building new businesses. And the business model component of it is such a critical way. The last thing you want to do is spend, 5 years building something and find out you'll never be able to economically do it. But the inverse of that is don't let that stop you from doing something that's impossible.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But from our end that's a real best practice. We develop and vote and innovate based on budget, customer budget.
And what customers are willing to pay for.
Right.
Well, and I love that we talked yesterday about pain points. We talked about, extreme sort of wonderful experiences, what people are willing to pay for. Talent. Let's talk about talent. Clearly, the future, we're going to continue to have this changing dynamic environment. So people who are agile, people who are adaptable, how do you hire for those people, A? And B, how do you continue to develop an organization, keep your organization growing and learning as you keep yourself growing and learning?
Wow, that's such a great question. So let me give you what an average day is for me. So I did tell you that the majority of my company are on average is age 27. So I'll give you a moment to think that through.
But they love feedback. They want to be growing.
So I get on a daily basis a line of people outside because we have an open culture. Anybody can hang out, and they'll hang out, and they'll knock on my door and just walk. I mean, it's okay. It's cool, right? And their job, it always goes like this: Carlos, I've been doing this job for 90 days and I've mastered it. I need a promotion. And I remember these out-of-body experiences, Betsy, that I used to have. They sit there and I was like, 90 days I've mastered it. And I'm like, what do you tell somebody, right? And what really, I was on a plane, I forgot the name of the guy, but he says to me, he says, don't get angry at it. I said, we've created that monster. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, all of them are gamers. So think about this for a moment, right? We're playing Donkey Kong, and we're working and working and working and working, and we finally get through the level. Bing, 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 we get all this reward, and what happens? You go to the next level.
Yeah.
Work is like Donkey Kong to them. They're like, I'm dating myself. I'm using Pac-Man and Pong, They're playing Halo and whatever the heck it is. But this notion of
mastery onto the next
mastery.
level.
So what I did was I challenged Kate, who's the head of our people inside the company. They also have cool names now. It's not the head of HR. It's like, people, I forgot what her real title is, but it's a funky title. And what I said, take this job title of this particular group in my success team, and I want you to break it into 50 levels.
Ooh, this is a valuable tip.
Give them 50 levels.
It's a brilliant tip.
And we'll throw some coins and make some noise. Bing, 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 bing. You got to the next level. I mean, let's play the game the way they play the game, right? So, but I mean, it's this thing of doing it, and you have to pay attention to them. Yeah. You have to really recruit differently. You got, pay attention to all the conversations that are having out socially, and the way we're recruiting is really leveraging the tools of today. The last comment I'll make on that, my aspiration is that 50 to 60% of the hires that I have in our company in a 3-year period will be people we pull out of school, and we have to have a really strong training program to be able to develop our own, because cultures are what makes it or breaks it, and every failure that we had has not been talent-based, it's been a cultural misfit. And the best way to grow your company is hire them young, bring them in, train them, give them 50 levels that they can, with sound and bonus points, and make it happen that way.
All right, I'm going to just summarize. I think you've been incredibly inspirational. And you reminded us that all of us are going to be disrupted no matter where we are. And so find ways to disrupt yourself so we lead it. I think the importance of obsessing on the customer and really providing a superior experience, absolutely critical. Building a culture of innovation, of experimentation, of iteration. Speed, 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 and both as CEOs and as top leaders really role modeling and creating learning, growing organizations. Does that capture it? Anything else?
Isn't she good?
No?
I mean, where are you? Where have you been all my life, Betsy? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
I love the levels. Is that
Great.
the best?
Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. 50 levels, my God, if we had that we do have that at the university. What am I talking about? So I want to put a fine point under Betsy's comment about failure. There are so many innovation gurus who run in and said, we've got to celebrate failure, and that's a non-starter. I don't know why people get so inspired by that. But we changed the language. She said learning instead of failure, learning. Here's a way to think about it. If your company goes through a 9-month, 2-year, 20-year, whatever process, and you spend $100 million and you launch that thing and it's a total dismal failure, that is failure. Let's be clear, that failed. Now, on the other hand, if you have a hypothesis here at Kin Global and you go back and you do a test and you find out you're wrong, that's not failure. But the way large organizations tend to work is, if somebody had a hypothesis and they find out the customer didn't like it, oh man, that thing failed. Oh, Jim, he failed. That's called learning, and that's called science, hypothesis testing. That's how we're supposed to be doing this. So that's a start. That's a start to overcoming that problem. Betsy mentioned the problem of shifting resources. The reality is we have to. Competition is more challenging today than it was 10 or 20 years ago. The data are clear. And a very quick story that is instructive to me. McDonald's got rid of its ventures group, did great for a number of years. We know the last few years it's had some trouble. It's on the way back up, and I hope they do exceptionally well. I'm a Chicago kid, and they're a great company. So they're on the way back. But the poster child for what ailed McDonald's was Chipotle. And Chipotle was invented and created by McDonald's in their ventures group and sent out for a 60-to-1 return, but they sent it out at the time because they said it's too small to matter. Have you ever heard that before? Is it too small to matter today? Now, we hear a lot about the small companies going to come out and kill the big companies. That's a simplistic view of the world, and it's not doing us any good. I'll give you a little hint from the same story. What happened last year with Chipotle? A wonderful company, by the way. I believe in the long run they'll figure it out. They had food safety problem all over the country, still trying to figure out what the heck happened. I would propose, no way to test this, I would propose that had Chipotle still been part of McDonald's, that would never have happened. So we are better together. The challenge is not to fret about whether we should be big or small or whatever. The challenge is to figure out how we can be better together. Carlos talked about, did you hear this? 8,000 different views of me. That is exciting and a little bit scary. It's all about the customer. It's all about service. Man, that company really screwed up. It took 30 seconds to respond to me, and I'm pissed. And that's where we're going. And by the way, we have to go there as businesses, as universities. We have to go there. We have to provide that service because somebody else will. But there's an ugly downside to this happy world. Karl Marx, he was wrong about a few things, but it got things right occasionally. Karl Marx said that late capitalist society is characterized more than most anything else by vanity. Vanity will be a driver of late capitalist society. Guess where we are, people? We're in a society where I have 8,000 different views of me, and that's not enough. I have a society where if we don't respond within 30 seconds, that's not enough. Again, I like it. I like being responded to within 30 seconds. But you know what? Personal power must come with personal responsibility. What does this mean? This means that ethics, liberal arts, those types of reflections will become more important. I loved Alyssa's comments yesterday, our student who said Kellogg is about low ego and high impact. And that's one of the reasons I'm pleased to be at this institution.